All right, so we've talked about adding mixed numbers, and it was pretty simple. So let's talk about subtracting mixed numbers. Now, I know that I've said that this is a little tougher, but don't stress. It is tougher, yes, but you already know all the steps that you need to know to subtract mixed numbers. So I think you're going to do pretty well at it. So it says right here that you can use equivalent fractions to subtract mixed numbers. Just remember that equivalent fractions are fractions that may look different, but they name the same amount. So let's think back about our mixed numbers. What kind of fractions are equivalent to mixed numbers? So if I have a mixed number, what kind of fraction have I learned about that's going to be equivalent to it? Hopefully you are saying improper fractions, because improper fractions are equivalent to mixed numbers. All right, so these are the kind of fractions that we are going to be working with. Improper fractions and mixed numbers, since they are equivalent. So let's go to the next slide. So let's start out with an example. Let me get this. Olivia had 4 3/4 boxes of games. She gave 1 1/4 of the games to her brother. How many boxes of games does she have left? So we need to subtract, because she had this many games. She's given this amount away, and it's asking how much does she have left. So we know we need to subtract. Now, whenever I go to write my problem down, my rules for subtraction still apply. My biggest number needs to go first. The only problem is now you have a mixed number. You have two mixed numbers that have a whole number and a fraction. So how we choose which one of these is to go first is to always choose the largest whole number. So our largest whole number out of these two mixed numbers is this 4. So that means that 4 3/4 must come first, and then it'll be followed by my 1 1/4. Now, here's the tricky part. Just because my largest whole number comes first, that mixed number comes first, doesn't mean that my largest numerator will be first. So I have to check my whole numbers, then I have to check my numerators. Well, with this particular problem, my biggest numerator is first. So I am good. So now we're going to use the associative property to subtract. We're going to kind of group these in our heads. We're going to subtract my whole numbers. 4 minus 1 is 3. And then we're going to subtract my fractions. 3/4 minus 1/4 is 2/4. So 4 3/4 minus 1 1/4 is 3 2/4. But you know 3 2/4 cannot be my final answer, because 2/4 can simplify. I can divide 2/4 by my greatest common factor of 2 and 4, which is 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is, looks like a subtraction symbol, but my dots are there, 2. So I get 3.5 as my final answer. So just remember, anytime we're subtracting, whether it's whole numbers, fractions, or mixed numbers, we have to have our largest number first. So let's take a look at another example. So here they want us to find 3 1/5 minus 2 2/5. So the first thing you need to check is, does your largest whole number come first? And out of 3 1/5 and 2 2/5, yes, my largest whole number comes first. Then you have to check your numerators. Does my largest numerator come first? Now, on the first one, it did. 3/4 was bigger than 1/4, and it come first, so we were okay. We just subtracted. Here, my largest numerator does not come first. So that means that we've got a problem. I cannot take 2/5 from 1/5. So what I'm going to do is, whenever this happens, whenever my smaller numerator is up front, I'm just going to make both of these mad. I'm going to turn them into my equivalent improper fractions. So 5 times 3 is 15. 15 plus 1 is 16. So I have 16/5 minus 5 times 2 is 10. 10 plus 2 is 12. So 16/5 minus 12/5 is 4/5. So I basically used equivalent fractions, my improper fractions, for my mixed numbers so that I could subtract them. So I subtracted 12/5 from 16/5, which gave me 4/5. And 4/5 is in simplest form. It's not an improper fraction, so it's just my answer. Now remember, you can always check subtraction with addition if needed. But we will move on to the next couple of examples. So here it wants us to find each difference and write in simplest form. So check the largest whole number. And yes, my largest whole number comes first here, so I'm good. Then we're going to check my numerators. Does my biggest numerator come first? And it does, so I'm good. So as long as those two things work out, I just subtract like normal. 5 minus 1 is 4. And 4/8 minus 1/8 is 3/8. 4 and 3/8. And since 3/8 is in its simplest form, it doesn't have a common factor greater than 1. My answer is 4 and 3/8. All right, let's move to this next one. 6 and 1/3 minus 2 and 2/3. So make sure your largest whole number comes first, and it does. Now let's check our numerators. Does my largest numerator come first? Here it doesn't. My largest numerator's back here in the subtrahend. So I have to make both of these mad. 3 times 6 is 18, plus 1 is 19. 19/3 minus 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. So I get 19/3 minus 8/3, which gives me 11/3. But I can't leave 11/3 as my answer. Why do you think that is? Hopefully you said it's because 11/3 is an improper fraction, and you're correct. I can't leave this as my answer. I've got to change it into a mixed number. So it's got that big head. I'm going to do the big-headed backflip. I'm going to divide. 3 will go into 11 3 whole times. 11 minus 9 is 2. So I get 3 remainder 2, which means my answer is, how many whole times did 3 go into 11? 3. How many were left over? 2, and my denominator stays a 3. Now, most of the time, you are going to, as a matter of fact, on all of your classwork problems, you're going to get this, whenever you subtract, you're going to get an improper fraction, and then you're going to have to turn it into that mixed number. Now, some of them will be easy like this, where you just subtract them. Some of them will not. You'll have to make them mad like this and then subtract. Whenever you make them mad and subtract, you're probably going to get that improper fraction that you have to change into that mixed number. On all of these, though, make sure that your answers are in simplest form. And do not leave off the whole numbers if you have to simplify. Remember, a lot of times I have people, it's 2 and 2/4 that will do this. And that's not correct because I have to have that whole 2 out in front right there. So don't forget to simplify and don't forget your whole numbers. But before you go into classwork, if you feel like you're ready to go, you can go. But I am going to do a couple more examples with you, or a few more. if you need. So here we go. Find each difference, write in simplest form, use addition to check. Now you do not have to use addition to check, but you can if you want to. So let's look at number 3. 5 4/5 minus 2 2/5. Check your whole number. Does your largest whole number come first? Yep. Does my largest numerator come first? Yep. So I get to subtract these, easy peasy. 5 minus 2 is 3. 4/5 minus 2/5 is 2/5. I know 2/5 is in simplest form because 2 and 5 are both prime, which means they only like 1 in themselves. So they only share 1 as their greatest common factor. So my answer for number 3 is 3 2/5. All right, let's go over here to number 4. Check and make sure, since we're subtracting, make sure your biggest whole number comes first. It does. Then check and make sure your largest numerator comes first, and it doesn't. So I'm going to make both of these mad. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 4, 19, 20, 21, 22. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 5 is 11. So I get 22/6 minus 11/6. I'm going to subtract. And I get 11/6, but I can't put that as my answer because it is an improper fraction. So how do I fix improper fractions? How can I turn it into that equivalent mixed number? Hopefully you said divide because that is correct. 6 will go into 11 one whole time, so that means 1's my whole number. 11 minus 6 is 5, so I get 1 remainder 5. So my remainder is my numerator over here, and my denominator stays the same. And I know 5, 6 is in simplest form because they only share 1 as their common factor. All right, last example we'll go through is this one right here. Make sure your biggest numerator comes, your biggest whole number comes first, and it does. Then make sure your largest numerator comes first. Well, these two numerators are the same, but that's okay. It's like saying 10 minus 10. I can do that, right? So 8 minus 3 is 5. And 2/3 minus 2/3 is, that's 0/3. So guess what? If I have 0/3, I have none. So that means my answer is just a whole number, which is perfectly fine. My answer is 5. So I hope these examples have helped. If you need any extra help, you can check out Excel, those starred P and R skills will help give you some extra practice on here. Let me know if you need anything.